All right, now it's time to kick off the after show. Magnus Ostrom's quote that I'd mentioned in the episode earlier, our sound would be very different if all we had ever listened to was jazz. Music plays a big impact on the impression that's in our head and in our minds as well as in our hearts. One of the things that Matt and I had been dialoguing about over the last couple of weeks, and a question that he wanted to ask Dad, would he have allowed us to listen to jazz in our house? We came up in a Christian household. We listened to all kinds of music. Matt and I and Phil all took piano lessons, so we understood classical music. We all three ended up in marching band, and Matt continued his music on the trumpet into the Army band for another decade. We've got music imprinted into our lives. We've had great pianists in our lives. We've had a lot of influences. A lot of music never came through the household willingly by our father, as we would think protected us or guided us from the music. So we wanted to get his take. Would jazz have been permitted? With that, let's roll it into the after show.
You know, we forgot the craftsmanship, the awareness, creativity, and spirit motion this week. I don't care. It's we're so hard hitting.
Well, I think into the future when we talk about the songs, to put into perspective what we're looking for, we could talk about those ratings right then and there.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the craftsmanship and the awareness, this is what caught me. This is what I like about the timing. If you say, hey, we're going to start at 15 seconds or at 145, it gives us a reason to say we're going to start this. Just start them all at the beginning and play the whole song is what we could do and be done with it for E.S.T.
Yeah.
But here's what stands out to me. And so it's craftsmanship, it's the awareness. And I didn't mention that, but those long spaces in the songs are the awareness.
Yes.
That I don't have to pack it full of music. I can just let the note ride.
Just between musicians saying, you got this note. I'll come in when I'm supposed to 2 bars down the road. You got this now. I'll do mine. The awareness between the musicians, yes. Even.
Well, and this, I didn't read this. This is what I was trying to get at earlier, and then it slipped my mind. The trio shows, and this goes back to whoever made that comment, they don't know what they're doing. The critic said that, and I would clarify, the trio shows a great interplay, especially in their ability to play in a very rarefied way. The musicians wait for each other and are not afraid of the emptiness. Not even Yuri Gagarin had to be, if he had the courage to be launched into space before anyone else. And so they not afraid of the emptiness. They were not afraid to do something that had never been done in Sweden, especially at that time. But they did something that shook the world. Gagarin did too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the other sentence in the magazine that I highlighted, it says we couldn't sound the way we do if we just listened to jazz, and that's why the Radiohead, influence was such a big thing for me. Because as I was reading the paragraph again, I'm like, okay, so it really makes sense that Radiohead was an influence because, they wouldn't be able to sound the way they did if they just listen to jazz. If all you're going to listen to is Keith Jarrett and Chick Corea, then you're going to mimic what you hear. But you start getting all those other influences in, and you can become your own.
Well, it was a few weeks ago when we talked about picking up the other sounds from somebody else, and it may have been in our phone call on the morning ofs, but if you're listening to Clifford Brown all the time or Fats Navarro all the time, you're going to play that way. When do you figure out how to play like you?
Right.
And so all of these influences come from thousands of different directions. If Tchaikovsky and Mozart and Beethoven are your influences, you're going to play like what you hear them playing. And so absorb as much as you can and play like you. Clark Terry, I love to listen to him more and more for the soul of his sound. But if I turn on Roy Hargrove, I want to play like Roy. I want to play like Clifford Brown. I want to play like Clark Terry. I want to play like
I want to play like Freddie Hubbard.
Oh, baby, stolen moments. That solo's going to haunt you. And so you start thinking about people like Kenny Durham and Cootie Williams and Pops and all those names. Go, man, if I could just, how about I learn to play like me? And in the process of learning, you're going to develop your own sound. I think it's called growing up. When you go through that toddler phase, I want to be like dad. When you get to high school, I want to be anything but like my dad. When you get to college, you go, oh my goodness, how did I survive? My dad's pretty amazing. You get to be an old fart like me, and you're thinking, holy crap, I had the world's greatest dad, but I'm still not going to let him be on Maria Schneider episode.
Okay. So, okay. All right. I have a question, and I'm assuming that the remixing is done and you're still going, right?
Yeah.
So this can be an after show discussion. So one of Esbjörn's influences was his dad, because he pushed the jazz thing on him. Think back, and I'm not blaming you for anything, but think back to when we were kids. If we'd have brought you an album that says this is a jazz album, can we listen to it? Do you think you would have let us listen to jazz when we were kids?
It's a good question. Good question.
I mean, Miles put out Bitches Brew in 75 or 78. 75. I was 8 years old. If I'd have brought home Bitches Brew by Miles Davis, you'd have looked at that and you'd have burned it or thrown it in the trash. But bring home, think of somebody else.
Louis Armstrong. I wouldn't have had any objection to Louis Armstrong.
Okay.
The big band stuff.
Okay.
You know,
he's a clean jazz player. Louis was, but
well, and that's interesting. An article that I've been reading called them highbrow or lowbrow jazz. Mm-hmm. That lowbrow was that funky butt blues from Buddy Bolden. Bitches Brew, just because of the names of things. You think about those, and then if you go to the highbrow, for our time, Spyro Gyra, Wynton Marsalis, Branford Marsalis, and Pops, of course. We might have gotten away with Santana, just not jazz, but
okay.
You would now.
What about Mahavishnu Orchestra, or even some of the Wayne Shorter stuff?
Right. Now, okay, but it's because we know what we know now about Wayne Shorter. I mean, he drank 3 bottles of cognac before he went on stage. But
8 nights a week.
Dad wouldn't have known any of that, so he looks at the album. Oh yeah, Wayne Shorter, he's a saxophone player. Sure, go ahead. But Drew and I talk about all the time, not limiting, but kind of guiding us to what you wanted us to listen to. So I just had that question, and I'll shut up and I'll give you space.
No, that's a very good question, because as I'm thinking and reflecting on it, because you were both of you guys were into music, and Matt, you especially with a trumpet and band, and I'm thinking trumpet music, sax music. I'm not sure I would have objected to much of anything regarding jazz, especially because you guys' connection to what music is all about. Now, you talk about rock, hard rock and stuff. That's where I drew the line.
Yeah. So you did take me to see Chuck Mangione. Do you remember? Either you dropped me off or you sat at the concert with me. I can't remember. Do you remember going to the embassy and seeing Chuck Mangione?
I think so, yeah. Because that was sweet.
We stayed after, and he came out and gave autographs.
Yeah.
But Chuck was a cokehead, and if you'd have known that, you might not have taken me.
Probably not. Now, your mama listens to Jack Johnson. I tell her all the time, he's hiring a kite, smoking that stuff. So, she likes the stuff. And drives me bonkers.
I'll get her a gummy, and I'll let her eat half a gummy, and then we'll put on some Jack Johnson half an hour later.
Yes, right. She'll be floating.
Yeah, she will.
Put on Concert in the Garden. See what happens.
Her
I
her
wouldn't
brain
do
might
that. I wouldn't do
explode.
that without giving her a heads up on that, because
Yeah,
I would
that's
never,
well-
ever hear the end of it.
You know-
Dave and Ern would kick our butts up and down the street.
I don't know the health benefits. She might get a good night's sleep with half a gummy.
That's true. I think she would.
So I want to go back to that question though. The arm's distance that we were kept from some of that music. What, as our father guiding your, because I know what your teens were. I knew us very well. What were some of the hesitations? What were some of the I might actually call them, from putting us into the gutter, the bumpers on a bowling lane. You put some guide rails out for us that in the music world, things that you did not want us to listen to, things that you thought were appropriate. What were some of those things that you were looking for and listening for?
What I was listening against was the hard rock, the heavy metal, the lyrics. To me, the lyrics were, I would use the term raunchy, but back then, you look now at what some of the music, the lyrics are, they're much raunchier or explicit than what they were back then. So it's more, well, okay, so say for instance, when the Beatles came out and said, we're more popular than Jesus. Okay, that's offensive. That's offensive to me as a Christ follower. It's just plain offensive.
Okay, but if you're a kid, if you're 8 years old, and when the music comes out and you listen to the music, but you don't see that particular quote, how does that quote affect a young kid who's listening to Hard Day's Night, who doesn't know that they said that? I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Again, what goes into your brain, what goes into your head is going to come out. That's garbage in, garbage out. That's as simple as I can put it. And so protect what stuff you actually put into your brain, your thinking. Everything that goes through the ears and the eyes, those gates open up a whole lot of other influences or other influences that could have a real serious impact later. Okay. It's like watching horror movies. It's like going, when you Drew, when you guys went with Matt to the neighbor's house down on Paulding, and you had just watched the Children of the Corn, right?
Yeah.
And the car wouldn't start, the Volkswagen wouldn't start, and you guys were freaking.
True.
And that's the kind of thing that.
Okay, but there's a power trio from Canada called Rush that never sang about drugs. They never sang about sex. They, their lyrics weren't F this and F that. And
now I'm gonna put a pause on that for a moment though, because I brought home Farewell to Kings, and I brought home what's the
Power Windows
by Rush.
2112. The guy.
No. Had the woman on it. The wind was blowing, and it had the spike in the middle of it. Hemispheres. Both of those albums I brought home, and he actually read through the lyrics. I owned those albums as a child. Well, as a child, I guess I was 13, 14 whenever CDs came out.
Oh,
look at him. Look at him. Look at him.
Okay. All right. So you own those albums, and then he drove Phil to an AC/DC concert.
He
dropped him off.
Yep.
I did.
That's bull. That's bull. That's bull. No.
I took you to a Chicago concert.
You took me to Chuck Mangione concert too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you drove Phil and dropped him off at AC/DC. You might as
I
well
don't
say,
know.
here's the joint that you can smoke before you go and see that. Oh, here's the needle. Put that needle in your arm before you go into the show, Phil.
Well,
Is
it was
he
the
muted?
good son. So
Is he muted? Drew, is he muted? I can't hear what he's saying.
So what I'm hearing is that over time you got a little more laxed on some of the things that the kids had access to. As far as Matt being the firstborn 5 years older than Phil and I remember getting a tape cassette of Michael Jackson. I think you stomped on it, did a Mexican head dance on it. You were not going to let this filth, this crap in my house. Now, that was Maple Place, so I had to have been 7 or 8, but so you got a little more laxed. And I think that's what Matt's question was, is would jazz have been something permitted? And I think that it really is an interesting look today, because every musician has had some kind of a questionable past. They may have questionable religious practices or
Chicoria.
But then I was reading again this article about drugs, narcotics, and alcohol in jazz music. This was an article done for a master's degree in 1985. And the correspondence, so many, 95% of the musicians had their substance abuse. And he mentions one. There was really only one that was clean, that was sober, and he was an influence on others until he died in a car crash, Clifford Brown. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a lot to be said about that from the 50s and 60s, which until the mid-80s and the Young Lions, the Marsalis brothers, and so many others bringing jazz back, we would have been bringing in the 50s and 60s jazz of the time, or that Chuck Mangione style coming in the 80s and late 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, and I did let you listen to Phil
Driscoll.
Phil Driscoll. Yeah,
Phil Driscoll.
He was a Christian.
Hymns of Praise, baby.
Yeah. That's a great album. Celebrate Freedom is still a great. I mean, that's just a banging great episode, great album.
And rock music by the White Heart group.
Yeah, and Petra. Yeah,
Striper.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's hard stuff.
Yeah,
Jars of Clay.
Yeah.
That was real heavy.
But
now,
Matt, if there's one thing that I would do differently, when we were driving,
black carpet in my bedroom.
We were driving where?
We were driving. I don't know. We were driving. Yeah, we were driving to the east, going to go visit DC. And you had that 8-track of Van Halen, and I threw it out the window. Do you remember that?
I don't think.
Oh, come on.
8-track or cassette?
I think it was an 8-track.
I don't think I ever had I didn't have any 8-track.
Well,
I don't think.
You had something by Van Halen, and you wanted me to listen to it for some dumb reason.
No,
I threw the sucker out the window.
You ripped his picture off the wall.
It was probably Running with the Devil, and that's when Dad chucked it out the window. Now you're flying with the devil.
Yeah, yeah. But I promise you, if you heard their version of Pretty Woman, you'd like it better than Roy Orbison's.
Oh, you think?
Mm-hmm. I'll play it for you sometime.
But Mama,
okay.
My mama said, it was Fonzie. What's his name?
Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler was the coach of the football team that the Waterboy played on. And he had a tattoo. All
right, I got 2 minutes.
Thanks, guys.
I think Dad ought to sign up on X as the Unconnoisseur, and he can post on Twitter all the time the episodes coming out and everything. That'd be great.
What
are you on X?
What have I got to do?
Create a new account so you can log in as you, and then create another account called the Unconnoisseur. No one's going to take that on X. I promise you that.
What's what?
Come on, Matt.
What about
It's the Canuter valve it's a Canuter valve underneath the automobile that has
Instagram?
to be lefty tighty righty loosen.
Instagram.
Yeah.
What about Instagram?
Yeah.
Create an account called the Unconnoisseur. You can
Okay.
switch between accounts really easily.
Okay. All I
And
gotta
you know
do
what?
is,
I may even sign up for Instagram if you do.
You're
That way I
already
can
on
follow you.
Instagram.
I'm not on Instagram.
Yeah, you're on Instagram. He keeps
I
I
am?
send you
stuff.
stuff. You just don't
No.
open it up. And
No,
look
I
at
don't.
it.
I don't have Instagram. I don't use Instagram.
Hey,
I may have
you
an
have-
account.
you
I may have an account, but I don't use it. It's
probably
dumb.
so.
It's
Matt,
dumb.
send you
Matt
some-
_ Rice 70.
70. Okay.
The last photo that you actually pushed up there was August 3rd. It was a picture of you and Kendra. If you see this lady, it means you're in Dublin, Ohio at Irish Fest.
Okay. Well, my stuff from Facebook goes right to Instagram. Then I don't.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
look at Instagram because it's confusing to me.
oh, look at that.
There's some-
Matt and Phil and Drew all in one picture. I can't show you that.
Yeah, I love that picture though. That was
Okay.
on National Brothers Day. All right. Hey,
Thanks, guys.
What's
a
the
fun
album we're
episode.
going to listen to this week? Oh,
Gil Evans.
Gil
Ah,
Evans,
cool.
Out of the Cool. And then we've got a 2-week discussion coming up here
Tomorrow morning.
tomorrow morning. Call me when you're ready.
How about this? Can we just go another week with Wes Montgomery?
No, no, I'm ready to move.
Oh, me too.
I'm ready to move. Okay.
All right. Cheers. I'll call you in the
Peace
morning.
out. All right.
Love you
Bye.
guys.
Love you
Thanks.
too.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.